Hi guys, it's Matt. Welcome to the video. I am a compulsive gambler in recovery, and I like to think of myself as your mind and movement mentor here to help you. So, why have I titled this video, "You Should Be Grateful for Your Addiction"? It's not a clickbait title. I actually do feel this is an accurate statement in the right context. So, let me explain. Of course, addiction is something that I suffer with. It is inherently bad. It destroys lives, it destroys families, it destroys careers. It's devastating. But I want to spin a little reframe on it today that I think might be quite valuable to think about. There is a saying in addiction where you're only really going to quit or change if you hit rock bottom. Now, one person's rock bottom, I suppose, will not be another person's, but the fact remains that there can become a point where it is enough. Enough, I'm done, I'm sick of this, I want to change. And what that is essentially is a leverage point to change, which is a very, very powerful driver. Now, what I'm arguing here, so to speak, is that someone who has reached that point and has completely looked to change the trajectory of their life, that is quite an advantageous thing in terms of the momentum that can create, in terms of the direction that can catapult that person in. Because let's be honest, without being offensive, the average person doesn't really set goals, doesn't really have a plan for their life, doesn't particularly do a job that they enjoy. They might just work from 9 to 5, use coping strategies to get through the weekend, live for the weekend, rinse, repeat. But because things aren't that bad, nothing actually changes. They just kind of bobble along the surface, just below the bottom, and they don't change. Nothing changes about their life. At no point do they make any kind of upward moves because there isn't really that leverage to do so. They say that the average person, by the time you get to late 20s, certainly early 30s, your personality is kind of just locked in, where there's only so much of yourself that you're going to be able to change. And one of the things that can change that is trauma. And I would include addiction as like a traumatic event that you can act as a pivot to shift and then change and go on. I know for me that was the kind of the case. I think there's an awful lot that frustrates me about the gambling addiction, and I try not to live too far in the past, but if I stop and think about it, there's definitely a large deal of regret there. Which is largely unproductive to stay there, but definitely, there's some things I wish I hadn't have done or certainly done differently. And that's kind of made me think about, what do I want out of my life? Life is very fragile, it's very short. It's made me a little bit more introspective and made me a bit more aware of my flaws, strengths and my weaknesses, and made me kind of a little bit more single-minded about what I wanted to do with my life. And I think that's the way that you want to think about it if you are struggling and you are in recovery, is to think about how you got to where you got, what are your character flaws, what are your defects, what do you need to work on, and you can be a bit introspective. And by doing that, you can really, really shape your life completely differently, and you can head off in a totally new direction. And like I say, without hating on the average person, without the leverage, they're just not going to do that. Life is just comfortable enough where there just isn't really any need to do that. And their life passes, they get to the finish line of life, whenever that might be, 80, 90, 100 years old. And then they might have some pangs of regret of kind of what if. And there was just no point was there ever really enough oomph to kind of shift, to force the change. And there's a lot of science around this. There is a lot of science around the fact that once the human brain gets wired in a certain way, have the synaptic pathways. It is really going to be an incredible amount of proactivity on your part to work on your mindset, your habits, thinking differently with constant course correction and upkeep that a very, very, very small percentile of people are going to do, because it's almost impossible. Or it's going to take a really kind of traumatic event that creates the leverage that then kind of opens the gates to go and completely shift into a whole new direction. So it sounds a bit, what's the word, callous, I suppose, or that to use a title like this, but I always try to see the positive in every situation. And I think if you are in recovery now, trying to build your life back better, head off in a different direction, you certainly don't want to waste any energy on living in the past and thinking kind of what ifs and that kind of thing. And there's the old saying, don't keep looking in the past, it will hurt your neck. You know, you want to think about moving forward and think about maybe some of the lessons that you can take from your addiction into your recovery, and kind of think about how that can maybe give you a little bit of a leg up on the average person. Not that it's a competition, but in terms of you moving forward and living your best life. So felt I better explain that title and give a bit of a context around it, and hopefully this has been useful. Please share this video with someone who you know might be struggling and might kind of find this information useful. I try to make the kind of content that a younger me would have felt like it desperately needed to hear. So I'm sure there's someone out there in that situation, and that always helps me support the channel as well. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video very soon.